Hey everybody, Rob from Sound of Music here. How's it going? So today I want to talk about the uh, the controversy that is always the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So a couple of days ago, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame officially announced the inductees for the 2020 class. This has of course caused a bunch of drama and a bunch of people basically unhappy with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, myself included, by the way. And it's always really interesting to me with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know, I always considered the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as an institution kind of that Rolling Stone sort of critic ilk, where it's the same people who kind of are on this high horse that think they know about music and, hey, they really don't, you know. The same people who, for example, criticized Led Zeppelin all through the 70s and then had to walk it back and all that, but without getting too much into detail there, basically, they announced a list around, I think it was September, October, of a bunch of nominees. And I'll read them real quick. I can even have them up here on the screen, actually. But we got Pat Benatar, Dave Matthews Band, Depeche Mode, Doobie Brothers, Whitney Houston, Judas Priest, Kraftwerk, MC5, Motorhead, Nine Inch Nails, Notorious Big, Rufus featuring Shaka Khan, Todd Rundgren, Soundgarden, T-Rex, and Thin Lizzy. It was interesting this year because there have been a lot of first-time nominees and a lot of kind of fan favorites as well. You know, first-time nominees like Thin Lizzy, Motorhead, T-Rex, a lot of bands that people have wanted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for a long time. So it's kind of cool that I will say on the Hall's part that it seems like they're finally kind of getting it in that they're actually nominating some of these people. And of course, in recent years, we've seen bands like Rush and Deep Purple and Alice Cooper and Kiss and bands like that have been long-time fan requests finally getting in, which is all well and good. But as far as this year goes, they seem to have really dropped the ball. So there seems to be, from what I can see here, a huge conflict between who the inductees are that they've announced a few days ago versus who people actually want. And now what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame has done in the last few years, for those who don't know, is they've had a fan vote. I believe it is the top 5 artists that the fans vote for get some kind of like small vote towards their chances of getting into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so I'll have it up on screen right here. These are the fan votes versus the artists that got in. So as you can see, there's been quite a discrepancy between the two. In fact, of the top 5 bands that fans voted for, or artists, only one of them have gotten inducted this year, and that's of course the Doobie Brothers. There's also apparently going on right now a huge backlash between fans of the Dave Matthews Band, who by the way got over 1 million votes in the fan vote, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, with a lot of people saying they want to protest the Hall of Fame and all this. And it's interesting. It again proves to me, personally, how out of touch the Hall itself is from the actual fans of this music. And, you know, I could get into the whole, like, you know, do these... Well, I guess I'll just get into it right now. So the bands we have that are definitely getting in are Depeche Mode, the Doobie Brothers, Whitney Houston, Nine Inch Nails, Notorious Big, and T-Rex. Right off the bat, I can tell you that there's one artist that should not be on here, and that's Notorious Big. And I've got nothing against rap, personally. I really like Notorious Big. I really love the album Ready to Die. And I've just kind of become a fan of his music, and a lot of, actually, early 90s rap. And as even a kind of a fan of Notorious Big, I don't think he belongs here. I know people argue over this, but I'm sorry, rap doesn't belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It should Notorious Big be in a rap Hall of Fame? Should he even be in a like general popular music Hall of Fame? Absolutely. He's a very important artist. He was a poet. He was fantastic, but he doesn't belong in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, Rush doesn't belong in the Rap Hall of Fame, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's nothing against the artist at all. I've got nothing against Biggie. I've got nothing against an artist like Whitney Houston, who maybe I would say has a bit more of, you know, I guess you could sort of justify her being in the Hall of Fame, at least more than Biggie. But, I mean, over Thin Lizzy, over Motorhead, over Todd Rundgren, I mean, some legendary artists here, over Pat Benatar. I don't see it, and here's the thing, and even a band like, so we have Nine Inch Nails, right? Nine Inch Nails, I think they deserve to go into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. However, they don't deserve to get in before Judas Priest, before Thin Lizzy, before Todd Rundgren, before the countless other bands from the 70s, God, even 60s, 70s, 80s, that are still not in, or a band like the Guess Who, or a band like Jethro Tull. I mean, these are bands that should have been in a long, long time ago, bands that haven't even been nominated yet, who still aren't in. I think even a guy like Trent Reznor would agree with that there's bands that have been snubbed, haven't even gotten nominated, who have been, up for nomination for 20, 30 years, who aren't in. And it just kind of baffles my mind that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame could be so blind to this. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding, man. Look at these fan votes versus who got in. It's no wonder there's been so much controversy surrounding this. I mean, I also think Dave Matthews Band shouldn't be in before other bands. I think Dave Matthews Band should eventually be in, but again, those early artists really deserve it first, in my opinion. If you're going by influence, if you're going by just longevity, if you're going by the innovation that a lot of these bands brought to rock and roll, I don't understand why a lot of these bands haven't long since been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, I'm looking at them right now. Look at Judas Priest. I mean, Priest has been around since the early 70s, and we're the first band to kind of wave the flag of heavy metal. They were the first band to embrace heavy metal and hugely influence the genre. Why are they not in? Why weren't they put in a long time ago? It's because there's a clear bias against heavy metal. There's a clear bias against certain subgenres of rock, like progressive rock as well. And there's just, and even beyond those two genres, there's any kind of not darling band who made it as a kind of made their career off of word of mouth, off of fans gravitating towards them rather than critical reception. There seems to be a pushback on these artists for some reason, and I think it's because a lot of the people who actually can vote in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame are the same people who have a bias against these bands. So to me, it's a bit unsurprising that there's such a disparity between the two, but at the same time, it is very frustrating, and I understand why people just kind of get sick of it. And there's kind of this argument that people make. It's like, well, who cares? It's just some stupid institution. It's like, it's just a bunch of critics, that have a bias against these bands. Who cares? These bands have made it in their own right. I think that's very true on some level, but at the same time, I think people as rock fans, a guy like myself, I think it's kind of annoying that an institution that calls itself the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and has all this prestige and all this notoriety to it, where people look at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and they think, hey, these are supposed to be the best, the best of the best rock bands. These are the bands that kind of pave the way for rock and roll as we know it. And it's kind of an insult to the genre, really, in my opinion. And I could see having certain non-rock artists in there. A guy like Johnny Cash is in there. He's primarily a country artist, but he influenced rock and roll. He unquestionably influenced rock and roll. Or a guy like Michael Jackson, who was the biggest pop star ever, I think has a place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And there's a few others. There's early blues artists. There's jazz artists that I can think of that I think influenced rock and roll enough to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. But there's a genre like rap, while kind of has its moments where it crosses over into rock and roll, it was more influenced by rock and roll than it actually influenced rock and roll. And I don't see how an artist like Notorious Big, as great as he is, or an artist like Whitney Houston, as great as she is, again, not knocking these artists. There's some great artists that are in there that aren't rock and roll. They don't deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I don't get the idea behind it. I think a lot of it has to do with publicity, with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame wanting a bunch of attention. And I also think the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame likes the controversy as well, because it gets people to talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It gets people to, click on articles about Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It gets people to tune into it. So sometimes, there's an old saying that there's no such thing as bad press. I think sometimes the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame purposely, I can't prove this, but purposely stirs the pot a little bit to get more attention to it. But by the fact that there are, I'm looking at the bands that won the fan vote here, the Dave Matthews Band, Pat Benatar, the Doobie Brothers, Soundgarden, Judas Priest. The fact that there is only one artist that is represented from the top 5 in the vote is just, it goes to show you how much the fan vote actually matters. And spoiler alert, it's not very much. So it's frustrating. I will say I'm really, really happy personally to see T-Rex get in. T-Rex is one of my absolute favorite bands, and they should have been in years and years ago. A hugely influential band for glam rock, and then I would say later glam metal, and just rock and roll in general. Mark Bolan's just a total legend, so I am really happy to see T-Rex in there. Depeche Mode, I'm not really, I really don't know them very well. I'm not really a huge fan, but I can see them, being in it. I think it's sort of justified. But again, my issue with a band like Depeche Mode or Nine Inch Nails is that I don't think they should get in before other artists. Like, I'm sorry, A band like Soundgarden, I think, deserves to get in. I wouldn't be so unhappy if Soundgarden got in. I would rather see a band like Thin Lizzy or Motorhead get in first, just because I think they came before Soundgarden, and I would imagine both of those bands at least somewhat influenced Soundgarden. So I'd love to see, those two bands get in, but I think Soundgarden more than has earned the right to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And that's one that I'm kind of surprised that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame snubbed, because got a lot of fan votes, and they tend to bandwagon off of musicians' deaths, unfortunately. And, with the recent passing of Chris Cornell, I'm really surprised that they didn't put Soundgarden in, but whatever. Either way, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a joke, as always. I don't think people should take it too seriously. Oftentimes the artists will make the statement, I remember Rush doing this, I remember Alice Cooper saying this, and a few others, that, they don't want to, it's not really a big deal to them. But then after they're inducted, it's always like, oh, I'm so honored, this is a big deal, blah, 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 blah. So, you wonder how much it actually bothers the artists, or how much they really don't care, but then put on airs afterwards about it being like this, great thing and whatnot. I don't know. I would think that something like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame would be something that the fans should really decide on. That's my opinion. But you know what? You're always going to have these people in their ivory towers who think their opinion is, they are the be-all, end-all of opinion on music, and not just music, many other things. You name it, movie critics, gaming critics, all this stuff. I'm a little not surprised that the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame essentially ignored the fans in this one, and but it is disappointing, and it's upsetting, and I hope some of these bands that didn't get in, particularly for me, bands like Judas Priest, Thin Lizzy, Motorhead, Todd Rundgren, Soundgarden, and even Pat Benatar, who I'm not a huge fan of, but I could see the value in her influence and her getting into the Hall of Fame, and I could name a ton of artists that, again, haven't been nominated. Jethro Tull, King Crimson, so many other bands that deserve to be in that just have been snubbed. I've mentioned the Guess Who they were a huge band from the 60s that still haven't gotten in. So, what are you going to do? It's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Not surprised by the controversy, just pretty disappointed with the nominees. And, some other person, some other body needs to make a true Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that can actually rival this, that actually has legitimate rock artists on here. And, who knows? But that's my thoughts on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, guys. What do you guys think? Are you guys happy with who was chosen? Are you upset? Like, who do you think deserves to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that's been snubbed for all these years? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, guys, take care. Peace.